Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down a hybrid interface by Accessible Box Extremist. So let's get straight into it. So what this system is a accessible box system where you have access to items, not barriers, but that was just me testing, and you get access to the box while it's being loaded, and you have access to the full boxes. Now, in this scenario, it's being used in combination with a multi-item sorter, mainly because most multi-item sorters are 2 wide tileable, so this system runs at 2 or with a width of 2. And yeah, I'm not gonna cover this multi-item sorter in this video, just because I want to get into the accessible box loader. But all you have to know is that it inputs items into this hopper right here. Yeah, this hopper right here, and that's how the whole system starts up. So let's get into it, I guess. Yeah, so basically when the items come through here, they get put in this hopper, which is unlocked, or no, it stays locked until the items come into this hopper, which powers this comparator, which unflicks this redstone torch and unlocks this bottom hopper. So items will feed into this dropper and then get pulled out into this hopper right here. When they're in this hopper right here, there is a comparator output that gets taken out, which powers this powered rail right here, which extends this redstone block, which triggers this comparator to be in a specific mode, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But once they continue their way down into this dropper right here, this comparator powers, which will power this redstone dust, which will power this repeater, which will power this redstone wire right here to remove this composter right here, unpowering this entire line. Not too important for now, we'll talk about that in just a second. So once the items come out down into here, this is your general how the system normally works, and in this case it's barriers, but it could be whatever. And it'll start filling, and it'll fill this box first until this gets fully filled up. Once it gets fully filled up, it'll fill into this hopper and start powering this line right here, which does the same, which moves this composter by powering this this comparator, which goes into this comparator, which will power this sticky piston right here, which will extend and unpower this hopper or comparator right here, which will unpower this repeater right here, allowing this item hopper to go out, and yeah, or unlocking this hopper right here, which will then go into this dropper right here. And that's essentially the main part of it. But basically, the reason for these signals up here, well, the reason for this signal coming out of this dropper going into this comparator right here is to power this, is so that way when items make their way into the system, they make an attempt to empty this system right here, clear all of this dropper line right here, and clear this item hopper right here, so everything can make their way into the shulker box if there is if it can make it and it's not being put into this chest right here. Now the reason we power this piston right here is because it powers this comparator, which is in subtract mode. And what that essentially means is when there's items being stored in this hopper right here, which basically means that, okay, there's a large amount of items being filtered out through this multi-item sorter, what will happen is it will push this and block any signals, so it locks this hopper right here, which basically means when there's a lot of items coming in, that's when we start to use this chest and this chest, because what will happen is this will power, this will back up, and then items will start to make their way into this chest, and eventually this chest if it gets to that amount of items being filtered. But that's basically this entire top half. Now we get into the shulker box breaking and loading, which I think is one of the most interesting things about this system. So basically there is or when this composter gets moved, it unpowers this redstone comparator and unpowers this redstone repeater, which unpowers this hopper right here, which allows items to make their way into this dropper. Now this dropper gets powered by this observer right here, which actually gets powered by this note block, which gets powered by this observer, and I'm just following backwards right here. It goes from this observer right here, which comes from this observer right here, which happens when this line is powered right here, and which comes from this redstone torch right here. So as you see right here, when this hopper gets items, it will unpower this redstone torch and power this line right here, and it'll cause quite a few signals, but the main one I'm going to talk about just now is the fact that it powers this line and powers this dropper, and this will keep power. This will power once, or no, will it keep powering? Yes, it will keep powering. Sorry, it will keep powering this dropper. How does it do that? Well, because when this observer detects something, it will power this block right, or power this observer, which will power this observer because it's observing that it got powered. The same thing happens here. It observes that this one gets powered, so it powers. Same here, but this time it powers this block, which powers this powered rail right here. So this is kind of a loop in itself. And basically, we hijack that loop signal from this observer, which sends a signal to power this dropper right here. And as well as powering this dropper right here. Because the way Minecraft Redstone works, this powers this and powers this at the same time. And this is also getting powered, interesting. Or so this is actually, yeah. So this is actually getting powered as well from this redstone repeater, but that's not too important. The main thing is what happens is this will unpower and these two droppers will both be off. And then when this powers, it'll power both of the droppers, shooting the item into this dropper right here. Now, how this dropper gets powered actually is through this observer right here, which gets what is when this dropper gets powered, which comes again from this signal right here. When this observer note block gets powered from this observer, it powers this and powers this powers the dropper through the comparator, which is quite interesting. And that basically shoots items into the shulker box. Now, as with most box loaders, what happens is we can't actually measure the fill level of the shulker box because all of our sides are pretty much filled. And we want this top side filled because we want it to be an accessible box loader. So what happens is we actually take a reading from this dropper here. And because of the way that items are getting filtered into this by this loop right here, there isn't enough time for this comparator right here to pick up a signal coming from this dropper. So only when the system backs up and goes into this dropper will this system fire. Now when it fires, it will power this comparator right here and powering this sticky piston with a 1-tick pulse, which will shove, or not a 1-tick pulse, sorry, it will keep this piston excited, which will shove all of this system going all the way to the right here. So when this redstone block's right here, it will power this line right here. What this line does is sends a signal down this line, which we'll talk about in just a second, but this is important for later. It also powers this block right here because it's linear, so it will power this redstone torch right here. And you're saying, why won't this also power this piston? Because this piston already got powered. How may you say? Well, because this birch log, as soon as it moves, this is one of those other weird observer updates, just like how if a scaffolding line and it gets the bottom flipped open or closed, depending whether there's a trap door there, and triggers a observer line all the way at the top, the same applies to this. This observer will trigger when this birch leaves changes its log source from right here. So it'll notice that this log has moved closer, which is a very weird property in my opinion, but I mean it works. So what'll happen is this will also powering this piston to shove the whole thing back and reset. Now, what happens with this signal here is it will power this sticky piston back, because when this redstone block is moved over, this sticky piston will move back, and then when this repeater fires again, it will push it back to here. Now, what happens when this observer gets moved back, being moved by the sticky piston, is it will detect that there's an update because it's been moved positions and power this piston right here. This piston will shove this entire slider right here down 1. Now what it does then is quite a few things. First of all, it will move this redstone block here, which updates this observer right here. This observer sends a signal to this line right here, or to this observer, which powers this observer, which powers this dispenser and powers this line right here. And we'll talk about all of that in a second when we talk about once the box actually been broken. But it will also unpower this redstone lamp right here because there's no longer a power source. So that causes this line right here to fire and basically pulse this block right here. Well, by pulsing this block, what we do is power this sticky piston right here to break this shulker box. Also pulses this note block right here, which pulses this sticky piston to move over and unlock this hopper right here, as well as lock this hopper right here. Now, this note block right here will also be moved as well and will be powered, which is when it gets moved, it will also be powered by this block of redstone, because the redstone block has not been moved yet, which will power this note block right here, powering this dropper right here, which is important again for later. So we've broken the blocks and unlocked the hopper, and the box has traveled all the way down into this dropper right here. Now what happens then is when this signal up here comes in handy. This signal that we talked about earlier will power this line right here, powering this dropper, shooting it into this dropper right here. Now this hopper right now is currently locked. So this is where we come back to this original signal, where this redstone torch gets unpowered. So this line will unpower and it will power this redstone torch right here. This line right here will power this dropper right here, as well as start this redstone clock right here to keep powering this dropper to shoot out as many items as possible if there is a backup. What will also happen is it will also extend this composter up here to power this comparator right here, unpowering this redstone torch right here, unpowering this line right here, and powering or getting this observer to update that there's no longer power in this powered rail, so it powers this dropper right here. So what has happened is that this dropper is powered, and this dropper is powered, so the shulker box ends up in this slot right here. And yeah, now how do we replace the shulker box? Well, that's where this second set of signals comes in. When this gets powered, it also powers this dropper right here, which is getting an input from the shulker line right here, this is your shulker line. I can fill this as well, and you'll see it gets sucked out because they go into this hopper and go into this dropper right here. This will get powered and shot up into this line right here, and then what will happen is this will get powered as well when this runs for a second time, which pushes it over into this dropper right here. And this is where this line comes in handy, because this line right here will detect that this has been powered and power as well this dropper again to push another item into this dropper, as well as power this dropper right here to shoot it and finally get powered when this line, power this dispenser right here to shoot out the shulker box once this gets powered again, because it powers the neighboring one. As you can see right here, this got powered, and yeah. How many was this on? I think it was 4. Anyways. So yeah, now that we replaced the shulker box, basically this is where the interesting stuff happens. Or this is like logic, I guess you could say. Basically, once the shulker boxes will keep getting shot into this box until it starts to back up. And then this is where this clock again comes in handy. Because if theoretically this dropper gets completely filled up by this box coming into here, we have to wait for this block of redstone, which eventually will get moved back because this signal will reset, because all of this signal will reset. So it will power or no longer be in this spot right here, unlocking this hopper right here, which allows all items in this dropper to get pulled out and put into this dropper and dispensed through the system right here. And this basically means that it's overflow protected, because all overflow in the system goes down into this right here, which you could put to a water stream to go to a separate input. Now, that is basically the entire system. This barrel right here isn't too important because it's just extra. There isn't a direct input or anything, so it's just extra for decoration. You could swap it out for whatever. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole system. There is this hopper locking right here, but this is just standard. That was my fault right here, but this is pretty much just standard hopper locking, the way that this locks, which you've seen a bunch of times on this channel already. Now, we won't talk about this up here because that's just a regular multi-item sorter. So this UI I think is pretty clean. Like, you got a couple clear display items right here, this one right here, as well as having access to the boxes right here and all of the items here, as well as power or the loaded box right here. Now, it's kind of a very specific use case because that it has to run off a multi-item sorter that's 2-wide tileable. But I don't know, I think it's pretty cool, like the way it runs things down here. It's very, like, height-wise, it's probably one of the most compact, accessible box loaders I've ever seen, especially for it being shooting the box up vertically. I think that's quite a unique feature. The one thing I'm not too big of a fan of this system is how that it only fills up this box right here, and then you have to keep a bunch of input stream coming up to power this line right here. And yeah, that's I don't know, that's like my only pet peeve with this system, but overall pretty cool system. And yeah, thank you for watching.